Welcome to FinBot Insights. Today, we're deconstructing the new rules of fixed income. The old strategies, the ones that worked for decades, are failing. Understanding precisely why is critical for any serious investor in today's market. Here's our roadmap. We'll start by exposing a fundamental crack in traditional portfolio theory. Then, we'll see how that's playing out in the bond market itself. After that, we'll look at how institutions are managing risk, and we'll finish up with a practical strategy that you can actually use. So let's get right to it. Our first section tackles the single most disruptive change in asset allocation today, the breakdown of the historic relationship between stocks and bonds. For decades, we've all operated under a very simple, very powerful premise. When stocks fall, bonds rise. This negative correlation was the absolute bedrock of diversification. But that safety net? Well, it now looks like it's completely torn. This isn't just a hunch. Oxford Economics is forecasting that by 2026, that historic negative correlation won't just weaken, it's going to invert and turn positive. What does that mean? It means bonds will stop being a reliable hedge. Instead of protecting you from a stock market downturn, they might just fall right alongside your equities. Now, this isn't some random market fluke. This shift is being driven by powerful structural forces. We're talking about persistent supply shocks, geopolitical instability, and what's called a rising term premia. That's the extra compensation investors are demanding to lock up their money in long-term bonds. The key takeaway here is that the old, comfortable pre-COVID investment world isn't coming back. Okay, so if the big picture hedge is compromised, what does that mean within the bond market itself? Well, it means that treating bonds as a single, uniform asset is a huge mistake. A massive division has opened up, and selectivity is everything now. To really understand this division, you have to grasp one key concept, the credit spread. Simply put, it's the extra yield you get for taking the risk of owning a corporate bond instead of a super safe government bond. It's how the market prices risk, and right now, it's showing us exactly where the cracks are forming. This analysis from Janice Henderson shows it perfectly. Look at the bifurcation. For higher quality bonds, spreads are tight. That means investors feel pretty safe there. But look at the lower quality stuff. Spreads are wide and getting wider. That's the market screaming that it's worried. So the implication here is crystal clear. We're seeing a classic flight to quality. Investors are piling into higher-rated debt for safety, which pushes those prices up and the spreads down. At the same time, they are fleeing lower-quality debt because they're terrified of defaults. The lesson? Credit quality isn't just a factor anymore, it is the dominant factor. Given this completely new and fractured landscape, let's pull back the curtain and see how the professionals, the big institutions, are managing their fixed income risk. Their approach is fundamentally different from how most retail investors think, and there's a lot we can learn from it. This quote from a technical paper by Richard J. Martin gets to the heart of it. Professional bond management isn't about chasing one single number like standard deviation. It's about building a fortress. It's about explicitly defining your biggest fears and then building constraints to protect against those specific scenarios. So what does that actually look like? Well, instead of asking, what's my portfolio's volatility? A professional manager asks, what is the absolute worst loss I'm willing to take if interest rates suddenly jump by 2%, or if credit spreads double overnight, or if we have another 2008? It's a much more robust, multi-dimensional way of managing risk. So that's how the institutions do it, but how can you, as an individual investor, apply that same kind of rigorous, scenario-based thinking? The good news is there is a practical strategy that imposes a similar discipline, and you don't need complex financial models to do it. The question really boils down to this. How do you enforce discipline and manage risk through a clear structure, rather than trying to predict the future with some complex calculation? You need a system. And the answer lies in a surprisingly simple, almost mechanical structure. It's called a bond ladder. At its core, it's just a portfolio of bonds, where each bond matures at a different, regular interval. The process is a disciplined, continuous cycle. You build a portfolio with bonds maturing, say, every year for the next 5 years. When the one-year bond matures, you get your principal back. You then take that money and reinvest it in a new 5-year bond at the far end of the ladder. It's a system that forces you to manage cash flow and interest rates over time. This visual from Franklin Templeton illustrates the mechanics perfectly. The money from that maturing bond on the bottom rung gets reinvested into a new bond at the top of the ladder. This structure systematically captures different interest rate environments over time. It prevents you from making the huge mistake of locking in your entire portfolio at one single potentially awful point in the rate cycle. When you step back, you see how a bond ladder directly attacks the biggest risks in this new environment. It gives you predictable income, it forces discipline, and it smooths out the effects of volatile interest rates by automatically reinvesting capital through different market cycles. It's a structural solution to a very complex problem. All right, let's bring all of this together with a final thesis. And of course, the necessary disclaimer that has to accompany any serious discussion of investment strategy. So here's the logical arc of our entire analysis. First, the old diversification model between stocks and bonds is broken. Second, because of that, the bond market itself has fractured, making credit quality the most important variable. Third, the sophisticated way to manage this is to constrain specific risks, not just aggregate them. And finally, the bond ladder is a practical way for an individual investor to implement that disciplined thinking. Now, let's be absolutely clear. This explainer is for informational purposes only. It is not financial advice. You should not trust me, and you should not trust any other influencer on social media. The responsibility to conduct your own thorough research and make your own financial decisions rests entirely with you. And finally, if you found this analysis valuable and want to see more in-depth content like this, the best way to support Finbot Insights is to click that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement really does help us keep this going.